Welcome to the Soulful Circuit podcast. I'm your host, Korin Torrence, and we have the honor of having the one and only Jason Johnson here with us today. Jason is a professor of journalism and politics at Morgan State. He is also a host on MSNBC and a podcaster, a man of many talents, as you can tell, and he is here with us today. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and taking my suggestions off camera.
I appreciate it.
Very much.
We had some technical beauty difficulties before we started, but Jason was kind enough to let me know that there was lipstick on my teeth. So now here we are. Much better, much excited. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Jason. We're excited to have this conversation. You have a very impressive background. You are on many platforms. You are all over the internet. You are all over the news. So we're thankful for you taking the time with us today to kind of like talk about what's going on in the world, where some of us are a little concerned. And at the Soulful Circuit podcast here, we're just here trying to just elevate vibrations of, the collective consciousness by education, wellness, and community. And today, speaking of wellness, we can't really have that conversation without really talking about the world around us and what's happening on the complicated fronts. So to begin with, tell us a little bit about what you're seeing in the political arena as it relates to tariffs. And I asked this question before you begin because I'm asking on behalf of a lot of my friends that are entrepreneurs right now that are really scared and are really struggling. How should they make sense of what's happening and how should they navigate this?
So there's three different things, right? It's like the overall impact, how should they feel, and then what should they do? Because those are different things. The overall impact is nobody knows because the people running the government right now are ideologues. They're not strategists. The people who are behind what the president is advocating for generally have a goal of sort of dismantling the administrative state. And that's a really fancy word for kind of wrecking the country. Yeah. Like they think America's an inherently bad place. They want to tear it down to the studs, sell off the extra parts to foreign countries, and rebuild it in their own image, right? Whether or not you can do anything about that is a separate question. When you get something specific like the tariffs, how should people feel? I don't know. It's like how you process issues, right? Yeah. I don't worry every day. Right. And I am an entrepreneur like anybody else. Nobody's allowed to not be an entrepreneur anymore. I mean, there's no job that you can have that's sort of professionally driven where you don't have to come up with your ideas and sell yourself and build things on your own ideas or brands. I choose not to live in fear a lot. It's a waste of time. It'll age you in not good ways. I think that a healthy amount of skepticism is always helpful, and a realization of how bad things are. Yeah. But just because you know how bad things are doesn't mean you can't be optimistic. Now, specifically as far as tariffs go, if you have a product-based business,
a lot of my friends
could impact you. Yep. Because we don't know what the prices are going to be. We don't know how the prices are going to be impacted. We don't know what's going to happen in manufacturing abroad, right? You could be the person who's like, I make a beauty cream, right? And I sell it at, local markets, or I've got a deal with some particular company one way or another. I don't know what's going to happen to your manufacturing. You don't know what's going to happen to your manufacturing. It may be fine, or it may have a 6-week delay, or some foreign nation, Brazil or Argentina or China or Taiwan may be like, I'm tired of working with America. We're just going to shut down your contract. Nobody knows. That's the reality that people have to understand about the current trade war. So now, if you are a simple consumer, and that's not an insult, but if you consume as opposed to produce products, well, you're going to get screwed. And I've been telling people for a long time, basic stuff like groceries are probably going to get more expensive. You should get more creative about how you get your groceries. I tend to try to go to farmers markets a lot. I have been advocating blackfarmerindex.com. Go spend your money with black farmers. When a simple increase of 2 to 3% for most African-American farmers would allow them to keep their farms and not have them taken over by the state or governments or banks or something else like that. So be conscious and aware of where you spend your money, but you can't control what's going to happen around you.
Yep. Okay, that makes sense. Well, I mean, right now, I think the biggest thing that people are also thinking about is just like technology, right? And this goes hand in hand from the fact that, a lot of people are losing their jobs and they're becoming entrepreneurs in other ways, right? A lot of people are doing startups, for example, right? And then we have the whole tech component to everything. And also on the Soulful Circuit podcast, the circuit, we focus on that tech piece, the tech disruption. So what do you foresee, or what are you feeling is going on as far as like employment for people as it relates to the emergence and the growing presence of AI in the workplace and just in society? I mean, we just saw that, we're building a hub in the Middle East as well. So what's going on with that?
First, I think people need to stop sort of aggrandizing what AI actually is. Like, you've got AI that's in your email that helps you finish a sentence. Like, I'll see you next week, and it finishes up in your Gmail. That's AI, right?
Yep.
But when people talk about AI as far as making films or writing contracts or something else like that, that's a completely different kind of program, right? Or large language model scraping that they do and just sort of going online. So the term AI has been used to explain a lot of different kinds of things that it ain't really, that it's not really addressing, right? It's like saying steroids, right? We hear steroids, you think, oh my gosh, that's professional athletes stealing and lying, right? No, steroids is also like what you put on your skin if your kid has eczema, right? like that's also a steroid. Yeah. So we have to make sure that we're being very specific about what we're talking about. AI, as far as basic informational labor, right? I want AI to help me write a generic contract as a lawyer. Okay, fine. It's still theft. It's still putting somebody out of work, but okay, fine. Because it's helping you do something that you would have done anyway. Okay, fine. Having an answering machine in 1982 instead of hiring an office secretary. AI, as far as the creative arts, it's despicable. It's theft. I don't care how many people say that it's breaking down doors. It's breaking down doors by stepping on the hard work and effort of people who've worked on things.
Creators.
Stealing faces, stealing music, stealing ideas, stealing concepts. Yeah. I was at a grocery store a couple of weeks ago in DC, and I was with a friend of mine, and I was like, look at this ad. And it was faces of people like buying stuff, but you look closer and it was an older black couple, and it was clearly AI. I was like, that is two 60-something-year-old black people who are models who are not getting paid now because these companies can just produce whatever fancy black people that they want and not employ them. That is a problem. And that's before you get into the tech of it all, which is that in order to build these data centers to make AI work, you are using thousands, sometimes millions of gallons of water from local communities in order to cool the supercomputers that you need to process for AI. And that is a danger to everybody who lives in and around the area. So not a big fan of it. I mean, like at any level, and I don't use it. Yeah. And if it's going to take me an extra 3 years to learn how to play the guitar rather than having AI steal some riffs, I'll do it. Yeah. I think there's a value to putting your hard work and effort into art. And I'm not a Luddite. I'm not somebody who says that you can't use technology. I love the fact that you can make a movie on your phone today and you don't have to have a $2,500 camcorder like you did when we were kids, right? But that's not the same thing as, rather than paying this artist to help take their vision and bring my vision to life on paper, I'm just going to use a computer that's going to steal all the artists that they have ever existed on the internet to give me some cheap idea.
Well, Jason, I like where you're headed with this, because this was a question that I had in mind too, right? When we're talking about AI and job placement. So we all just saw what happened with the strike, right? Especially in Hollywood. We're in California. We're in Los Angeles. People don't know that right now recording.
But it was colors.
But you can also, there was also like a domino effect, right? That people are still trying to bounce back from. And I don't know if there was even agreement truly reached that benefited actors or people who are actually in entertainment. So I guess the question is when we have that blend of like media, politics, and just like opportunity for employment, what is going on right now, right? Like, how are people going to find these opportunities if they can't even get an agreement to say, all right, this streaming network means this for me, or this streaming network no longer needs to pay me after a certain point, despite playing my likeness or my image or a video of me over and over again, right?
I don't think anybody knows. I mean, that's the thing. So I was given this example in the last writer's strike, which was, I think, 08-ish, right? It's the last time they had the major strike, which was always, I always remember that because it had a huge political impact. So you had the writer's strike that was in 2008, that lasted a couple of weeks, and it went all the way through the early part of the primary between Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. I've always said that the first writer's strike is the reason Obama got elected, because what happened is nobody had anything new on TV for like 2 months. So the most interesting thing, like the Hillary versus Obama race in the primary in 2008 became everybody's reality TV. All the local news networks ratings skyrocketed. MSNBC, CNN, they all skyrocketed because what Obama said, what Hillary said, what primaries this, that, the other. It was the most interesting thing every night because Desperate Housewives wasn't on, right?
Yeah.
So
that was a good show.
There were many people.
I was addicted. Yeah. I was addicted. I'm not going to lie.
Many people were super huge fans. So I say that to say during that strike, I remember I have friends and colleagues who I've worked with who are part of those negotiations. And they said, look, at the time, they were fighting for things like residuals from DVDs. Right. Wow. And this is 2008. And they're like, hey, you're selling DVDs, out the wazoo. We're not getting paid for it. It's always difficult as labor to negotiate for future technology. Right. And so at the time, there were people who were saying, by the way, there's this Netflix thing and there's a thing called maybe streaming that can happen. Right. And all the corporations and Disney and Warner, and they're like, streaming? What is that's crazy. What are we talking about? And so they signed the new deal and they don't really include streaming. And then I think it was like a week or two after they signed their last collective bargaining agreement, Hulu was launched. Yeah. It's like, sorry, we had that in our pocket the whole time. So now you are 10, 15 years later and you run into the same problem. So I say this to say, I think what the actors and the artists did was good. It did give them some protections. It did give them the opportunity to say, you can't have this script written in AI and then pay one human being to come in and fix it, right? Yeah. You can't make a show where you have us work in a mini room for 2.5 months and then take one script from that and fire us all. You have to have a minimum number of people to work on a show. Like all sorts of things like that are super duper important, right? But whether or not you can control what will be done with phony artificial intelligence or likeness stealing down the road, I think the technology is always going to move faster than labor. So it's not a losing battle, but it's one where you have to stay vigilant. And it's one where, frankly, people in positions of influence and production, they have to take a value stand.
Yeah.
You have to say, all right, look, I want to make this animated cartoon. I could use artificial, I could just, use some model to do it. I could use VO3. I think that's or VO3 or whatever. It's the newest thing on Google. Or I can actually hire somebody. Yeah. I think I'm going to hire somebody. I think I'd like to do that. I think the quality of work that I'll create by hiring somebody will be better. So there's always opportunities. Look, there were people who said that the car was going to destroy all transportation because you couldn't have horse and buggies anymore, right? Mm-hmm. There are people who said that the telephone was going to ruin mail couriers. That didn't happen, right? So I don't think that it's gloom and doom, but I do think people need to make both moral and economic decisions about how they want to move forward because none of these corporations care about us.
I was about to say the moral piece seems a little out the door and it feels that way a while ago. So what advice, do you have for people where you feel like everything in this country right now is just ruled by bottom line? And
it always has been.
But it feels a lot worse right now.
We're in a better position than we were then. I was literally, it's this. This is obscure, but it's like an old Generation X-y thing. This morning, for some reason, I was down this internet rabbit hole about this old TV show called Cagney and Lacey. I don't know if you ever remember the show. No. You probably don't, okay. Because I'm a little bit older than you. But it was this really impressive hit in the early 80s about these two women who were undercover police officers. Okay. And that was really novel for the time, right? Okay. And so I'm reading the story about how the first season didn't do very well, and the executives were literally saying, well, they were too aggressive. They were like a bunch of lesbians. And this was being said publicly in 1983 by television network executives, right? And so when I talk about taking moral stands, right? You can't say that anymore. Yeah. And it's not purely economic. It's because today, probably by 1993, there would be somebody else in the room who's like, yeah, that's not cool. No, you can't say homophobic things. Yeah. We can make a TV show and we don't have to insult people. We can make a TV show and we don't have to degrade people. So morality is not only a spiritual value in business, but it is a commercial and ethical value. Yeah. Think of how many movies get shut down and TV shows or projects or businesses get run down because somebody's a scumbag, right? It's like, bad people cost you money. Immoral people cost you money. Like if you really want to think about it.
That's true. That's true.
And on an interpersonal level, right?
Yeah.
I look at this. I'm not running around hugging trees, right? And I've never been arrested, attached to a redwood. But I spend money at the grocery store on what are natural cleaning products. because that matters to me, because I don't want to spend my money on things that poison the environment. I spent an extra 30 minutes running around this morning trying to get my breakfast together because I'm buying organic products, and I look at the PLU to make sure it says 9 instead of 4, and definitely never touch an 8, right? Does it cost me a little bit more money? Yes, but it is a moral, ethical decision. When things are made organically, it is less toxic to our earth, which makes our planet last longer, which prevents things like forest fires like we have here in LA, and maybe allows me to live longer. So you can make moral decisions, even small ones, day in and day out. And you don't got to preach it all the time. You don't have to put it on social media. Just live your life. But you can live it a better way.
Recycle. I see where you're going with that.
Even when that doesn't work.
I know. So, okay, let me ask you this, though. Where are we in the AI front in the grand scheme of things, right? It's a race. All this is a race. It's getting more intense. What do you see right now?
All right. So let's say we were having this conversation in 2018.
Okay.
And somebody would be sitting across me saying, you know what? Crypto. Right? And here we are 7 years later. It's like, it's a scam and it's stupid and it doesn't really work. Right? I mean, it doesn't. So that's AI.
Yeah.
Like lots of smart people have been saying like, yeah, this stuff is not going to do what you think it's going to do. And it's years away from doing what you think it's going to do. And the way it's going to work is it's way more likely to be a doctor is in her office saying, hey, can you look up this thing, computer? Thank you. Rather than her having to go to a book, right? That's much more like it's just going to be fancy Alexa. And
I think it's going to be bigger than that.
I don't think it will be for most regular people anytime soon. I think that the ability to take a young version of Brad Pitt and put him in an X-Men movie that's, in 1950, right? That's cute for a YouTube trick. But is the consumer going to pay money for that? No. Most of us are just highly evolved shaved monkeys, right? That's why YouTube is so popular. Human beings would rather look at themselves or a mirror than most produce television anyway. So AI is actually moving from an entertainment and production standpoint. It's moving in the opposite of what consumers want. Consumers want to see human beings. They don't want to see fake versions of it. Technology, as far as medicine and writing and other professions, yeah, I'm sure it'll advance. But entertainment, I don't think it's going to be. I think in 5 years, it won't be as dead as crypto, but it certainly won't be as influential as the soothsayers are saying right now.
Well, strategically, since I look at it like, we had our little space race back in the day, right? And now we have our AI race right now. Everything's rooted in disruption, being the first one there. Part of my question is going into the question of, us as a country coming together with other foreign nations to create an innovation opportunity, right? We just saw it over the news the last couple of weeks. NVIDIA was present, right? OpenAI was present. What is going on? Because that's a unique group of people all to be in one space. And for outsiders who might not know how powerful everyone in the room is, like those are some really, really huge power players in the world of AI coming together. And there's got to be more to the eye that's what's being put together in the grand scheme of things. And I'm just wondering, what do you think that is? So
I'll say this as a political scientist. These people are globalists and they don't care about countries. We're dealing with an authoritarian isolationist administration right now that will very likely make it difficult to have competitive elections going forward. These large global corporations have no interest in boundaries. They don't believe in nation states one way or another. So, excuse me. So a bunch of tech billionaires getting together saying we're going to make fancy robots one day. Yeah. They don't care if that's Argentina or Mali or Pakistan or in Poughkeepsie, New Jersey. They don't care. I think we make a mistake if we look at technology as being in any shape, way, or form centered in a particular geographic space. What those men and women want to do is create almost sort of technological fiefdoms where they can just kind of run whatever the hell it is that they want to run. Now, whether or not we'll be able to fight that would require stronger administrations than we currently have. But I view that kind of innovation as distinctly different from conversations about how nation states operate. Because the way a nation state operates is nation states have thus far demonstrated a disinterest or an inability to control the tech oligarchs that are growing within their borders. Yep. And so as long as that's the case, those guys are going to go create whatever it is they want. Whether or not the United States will stand up for it or to it or something else like that, I doubt it.
Which brings me to my next question, regulation.
Not going to happen.
Where is that with AI right now in the U.S.? And there, I mean, like, it seems like other countries are putting those guardrails up, but we're not. And I feel like with that comes a certain amount of risk and potential danger that people aren't anticipating. So, I mean, as the people, as a voice of people who want to have certain protections, not everyone's going to sit and read all those term agreements anytime they sign up for anything that's like 800 pages long. But like, what can they start doing to advocate for the need for, honestly, more protections on AI as it continues to evolve at this rapid rate?
So those are two different things. So the thing number one is regulation. Regulation is done. It's done. Elon Musk, who technically is pretending that he's leaving the White House when he's actually not leaving the White House. He's still going to do things remotely. The biggest thing that he took from the White House is all of our data and possibly Stephen Miller's wife, but we don't know how that worked.
What?
But yeah, it's a political thing. People will understand. So at the end of the day, there is no technical regulation in this country, not in any functional way. The current administration wouldn't have any interest in it. So it's up to the consumer, which is a burden that most people don't want, to look at what they're signing up for. And as you said, most people don't want to pay attention to it. Here's the thing about that. And I think this is super duper important, even though it ain't always the answer that people want to hear. You don't have to use most of this stuff. You really don't. If you don't want Instagram to take your voice, then stop posting, right? If you don't want I don't use Facebook anymore. I took it off my phone. I don't need it.
But for other people, that's the way you keep in touch. We're all spread out.
How do you keep in touch with Nana? There is this innovation called a phone. How do you keep in touch with Nana? There's an innovation called a telephone. Okay. And you can call your grandma, you can call your auntie, you can text people. I am not a Luddite. I do business online, right? I have a YouTube channel, right? That is monetized, that's work. Like, I understand the value of being online. I'm not saying that people can go hide in a cave and Ted Kaczynski themselves. That's not going to work, right? But at the same time, the way and the consistency with which we use these things is way above what we actually need. You can go to the grocery store. You don't have to use every delivery app.
Yeah, they're just getting a little too lazy.
And the more places that you go, the more places that your information can be taken from you.
Okay. Got it. All right. So why are you so passionate about this field? Politics, right? Like, I mean, I say this with someone who started off her career on the Hill, right, in DC. Over the years, it's just the vibe has changed a little bit, right? It used to feel like sports, like you can root for this team and I can root for this team and we can all, still have a drink at the end of the day. But the tensions are rising, right? And it's making it harder for a lot of people. And I mean, whether we're seeing, protests or other things like that, a lot of people are saying like, I don't even watch the news anymore. Like, I don't want to watch it. I don't want to know. It's like overload of information and like sad things that like, your psyche might not even be ready for, or on repetition, right? So I guess my question for you, as we talk about these things and people are becoming more and more like challenged with the idea of knowing what's actually happening out there, what advice do you have for them on how to like navigate this new frontier of like politics is really, really, really stressing us out, dude.
So
And most people I know in it, respectfully, have kind of left, right? That's why I'm like, what keeps you in it? What keeps you fighting the good fight?
So I talk a lot about cyclical history, and I won't go into the whole thing about it now, but I will say this. What we're experiencing now is an ebb and flow of history that has always happened in this country and always happened with Black and brown people, right? It's the 1820s, it's the 1920s, we're in the 2020s. You see these cycles, they're 30 or 40 year cycles from the 60s to the 20s, from the 60s to the 20s. So I say that to say that if you pay any attention to history, you recognize that these things don't last forever, right? They're about 40 years now. Most of us aren't going to live to see the end of this one, but it doesn't mean that you completely detach and disconnect. For me, there are all sorts of things in politics that I don't find interesting, that I don't engage in every day. But at the same time, we're alive. I can't fathom people who say, gosh, this is too tough now. I'm not an activist. I'm not an organizer, but I recognize that I have more tools at my disposal now to make the best world I can for me and my family and anybody else than any person at any point in history has ever had. Ever. We can talk about things happening in Israel and Gaza and do things about them if you care, right? You couldn't do that 100 years ago. You didn't have the points and resources. You were dependent on a newspaper or a silly, a movie reel or something.
Or letter by bottle.
Exactly. You couldn't go out and say, hey, I'm going to move to this different location because that's what I believe in and that's what I want to do. So to me, the core of politics is not about an exchange of resources between powerful people. The core of politics is that at one point in humanity, if you had a group of people and they were crossing the Serengeti and they had to decide, we're going to go over the river, we're going to go around the other side. They could beat each other up over it or they could have a discussion. That's politics. We're still in the discussion stage. Like we don't have to beat each other up yet. Yeah. So I am of the belief that daily consumption of news is not the same thing as being engaged in politics. Being engaged in politics is the small decisions that you make every single day to make the world a better place for you or your family. It's how you spend your money. It's where you spend your time. It's buying a book from a local bookstore instead of going to Amazon. It's telling your children, hey, cops are dangerous. Right? But it doesn't mean that you can't call them if you need something. It's using healthier gas. It's saying, I don't want to buy a Tesla. These are fairly simple decisions. And if people want to live that way, you can make the world a better place. We get into trouble when we think that you got to eat the whole hippopotamus at once. Hippopotamuses are pretty big and they smell and they're violent, right? You ain't got to eat the whole thing. Start with a toe.
Okay. All right. Got it. That's good. We'll start with the toe.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a valid point. And I hear you on that. But this is where everything that I just asked you kind of merges, right? Mm-hmm. And it's the fact that, we're talking about disruption in AI. We're talking about lack of regulation. We're talking about tech bodies being more integrated into politics and policy, which in a way that we've never seen before.
Right.
And then we're seeing that also like a lot of shaking up of, existing institutions, whether it's Department of Education or any other, department for that matter. That has led to a lot of people being impacted financially from their career. And the beauty about DC originally was if you get that SCS clearance, that top secret clearance, you're set. You can jump around to all those things. You have the good government job with those benefits that come with it. And no matter what, you have an opportunity to go here and to go here. As someone who's like not necessarily integrated in that community anymore, what is happening to those people where like what can they jump to? What are the opportunities given that so many government roles are now being dissolved?
So the short answer is it depends on what you did, right? A lot of what I say that because the people whose jobs have been eliminated by DOGE, some of them, they may never get those jobs back. But increasingly what we saw with DOGE is that people were getting fired and then they recognized that they were essential employees and they had to be hired back, because it was demanded in congressional law that no, we actually have to have these people. And they get hired back as contractors. So it really kind of depends on what you're doing. Is it good? No, it's not good. It was a direct attack on the black middle class. That's exactly why they did it. It didn't have anything to do with money. Remember, they said they were going to save us $2 billion at first. And it was like, well, it's going to be $1 billion. Then it's going to be $800 million. They don't know how much they're going to save at this point. And the thief has already left the building because Elon Musk is technically no longer working in Washington, but we have no idea how much of our data he stole or what he's going to use it for. So if you are somebody who is out of work now, not only am I extremely empathetic about your situation, my parents both worked for the federal government in various capacities over the years. My guess would be your best bet might be to try to find work within your state, because what's being cut down by the federal government, most states are going to have to try and fill in that gap, right? Like that's the problem. These are not, there's not a lot of fat actually in the federal government. The biggest waste in the federal government is in the military. It's not in human resources. It's not in environmental protections. It's not in election security. It's $5,000 for a hammer to build fighter jets that we don't use anymore because that's not how we fight wars. So that's what I would advise for those people, for their loved ones, for people whose lives and incomes and finances have been affected by this. And this is people who I know personally.
Yep,
I know people who have engineering businesses that depend on DoD contracts that have all been wiped out. I have close family friends who work for, the FBI, and they're being told, okay, you've got 6 weeks and you have to move to Huntsville, Alabama. Otherwise, you're going to eliminate your job, because Kash Patel and Dan Bongino are crying on CNN every day saying, we don't know how to do our jobs, because they never should have been hired to begin with. That stuff is difficult. I don't know what somebody in that position does, but I know for their family member, being understanding is the most important.
Yeah.
You got to recognize that these people have been fired and let go from their jobs as part of a larger political agenda.
Yeah.
And it's not any particular failure on their part or a lack of innovation or a lack of effort.
That part.
And then long term, I really, really don't think that people should be thinking about 2026. Stop talking about elections. Elections are way far off, and that don't do anything if I'm living paycheck to paycheck. Right. If my rent is $3,500 a month and I live in downtown Georgetown, right? The election in 2026 is not going to do anything. The mayor's race is not going to do anything for me. What people have to actually do is protest. You have to protest. You have to go out and publicly complain and make these jobs and these decisions that the federal government is making difficult. If you do that, you have a greater chance of being rehired. The reason DOJ has had to rehire so many people is because people were complaining.
Yeah, I saw that.
If the press and the public weren't getting mad about this stuff, then they would get rid of every single park ranger in Yellowstone and then sell it to some oil company, right? Yeah. So it sucks, right? People don't want to have to go out in the streets in March, but if your job is that important to you, you may have to take some extra steps to tell the people who are trying to attack it that what they're doing is wrong.
I hear that. So Bill Gates had an interview the other day, and he made a comment, and I believe the exact comment was, you should be concerned when the wealthiest man in the world is trying to dismantle like 1% of aid to the poorest people in the world. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about aid, right, and we're here, the Soulful Circuit, like I said, like it's all about goodness. We're all about good vibes, wellness, and helping each other, community, love, all that jazz. It was really disheartening to see that, right? To see that, a lot of these resources for, different communities that need it were being slashed.
Here's the thing. I'll give a more basic example than just aid, right? We think of aid as Black Hawk helicopters dropping packages of food to some war-torn part of the world. Okay, yes, that's part of aid. But aid is
school lunch programs too.
Yeah, school lunch programs. Yeah. We're foreign countries. Yeah, foreign countries. Yeah. So one of the things that you do when you're an empire, and the United States is an empire, a dying one, but an empire in its last legs, is you use soft power. And soft power, hard power is I can blow you up, right? I can take this from you. But soft power is culture. Soft power is support. Soft power is we're going to make sure that American movies are available in Saudi Arabia, right? Mm. We push for that sort of thing so that we can change the culture, et cetera, et cetera. Soft power is being damaged by these kinds of decisions. Right? Because it's one thing to say, we're not going to provide free vaccines to people in Taiwan who are dying, right? That's immoral, but it's also dangerous because if you have diseases and illnesses that get out of control, they will spread and they'll end up here. Right. It's for all the times that Republicans and the American right have used the idea we have to fight them over there so we don't have to fight them here. Apparently, they never think about that when it comes to germs. They never think about that when it comes to bacteria. But if you stop these mosquitoes from killing babies, in central Kenya in a small town because it takes 3 cents to give them a vaccine, then you don't have to worry about that same mosquito laying an egg in somebody's suitcase that they take to London and then they take to New York and suddenly you've got people sick on the subway. Yeah. Right? So that's one thing. The secondary thing is making America a less appealing place culturally. Means that people don't want to come here to go to college. They don't want to come here to get their second university's degree. They don't want to come here to get their PhDs. There are so many world leaders right now who spent some critical part of their education in America. It's the reason Netanyahu speaks good English, right? He went to school. I mean, like most world leaders have spent some time, or they have people in their administrations who spent some time getting an elite American education, which means that they have a view of this country that is more positive than what you could just get from a history book, right? If you went to a Harvard, MBA program in 1987, and you have a couple friends there, when you are the prime minister of economic policy, in France, you're like, we could go to trade war, but let me call my friend. Let me call my friend Gary. We went to school together. We went to the MBA program. I said, Gary, is there a way we can do this? That's how the world works, right? It's interpersonal relationships. So if you make America a place where nobody wants to come here to get educated, where people who are here getting educated are like, this place is terrible. I got to go back to Saudi Arabia. I don't feel safe here. In 10 years, when those men and women are running their countries, they don't want to work with us anymore.
That's a good
They're going to say this is not a good place. They don't want to send their kids here.
That's a good point.
And then we're more isolated down the road. The people who are being abused and offended and kicked out of the country now will be the men and women leading the countries that we got to work with in 15 years. So that's the problem that I see with the lack of aid. That it starts with practical things like disease control, right? Which leads to political destabilization, which leads to terrorism. And then you've got the soft power where if you're not offering scholarships, if you're not making this country open and available, then why does anyone want to work with us?
Those are all valid points. Thank you, Jason.
That's what I do.
Well, we're almost at time here, but one of the things that I like to end at on the Soulful Circuit podcast is something positive always. So with that said, mental wellness is a very, very important topic to me. And I feel like a lot of that's rooted on, not only just self-love, but people just having something positive to hold on to, right? So I guess my question for you is, what can we look forward to right now?
Every single day that you wake up, that you can see and walk and hear, you can turn it into a good day. I'm not one of those people who has to say it could be worse, but I'm literally saying there are people who ain't gonna wake up today. People who aren't gonna wake up today. You have a chance to do something else. As long as you've got a chance, that's all we ask for in life. As long as you got a chance, you can turn it into a better day. And I say this to somebody.
Make your own reality.
I am that far. But I say this to somebody like, I got down days. There are days I'm frustrated and bothered by what happens in the world, but I'm like, I got tomorrow. And as long as tomorrow exists, there's a crumble cookie to buy. There's a park to walk to.
Cookie?
There's simple things.
Okay, yes,
simple
fair.
things. I sometimes
people in that cookie. Go ahead. They love it so much.
Massive.
Okay,
massive
guys, maybe
cookies.
that's what it is.
But I say this because I think sometimes people because it's an industry, people make wellness way the hell too complicated. When I was a kid, and you have a son, so you know what this is like. If you've ever had a kid that you bought a really cool gift for, and they're way more interested in the box, right? And they're just like, they want to play with the box. Like, but I got you. It's French talking Elmo. And they're like, but I want to play with the box. And it's like, you can get joy like that. There's a joy in the box. There's a joy on a random TV show. There's a joy in a leaf. People deal with depression and migraines and physical illnesses. I'm not saying those things aren't real. I'm saying that every single day that you are alive for 24 hours, I challenge you to not find something that makes you smile in the 18 hours or so that you're awake. And if you can find one thing that makes you smile, then you can look forward to that the next day.
I love that. Thank you, Jason. Jason, it was such an honor to have you here today.
I'm happy to be here.
This was such a great discussion. I hope everyone enjoyed it. It was such a pleasure. And thank you again for joining us on the Soulful Circuit podcast. We look forward to having you again back soon someday.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful being on the Soulful Circuit podcast. I hope I have completed the circuit by being here and connecting all of these wonderful ideas and technology together.
You did, actually. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.